when a high-end boutique employee sneered at a casually dressed man and turned him away. She had no idea she had just insulted Keanu Reeves. What started as a quiet shopping trip soon escalated into a profound lesson about humility, kindness, and the danger of judging someone by their appearance. And when Keanu returned the next day, the entire store and the world would never forget what happened next. The golden glow of the setting sun bathed Rodeo Drive in warm light, reflecting off the pristine glass windows of the city's most exclusive boutiques. The street pulsed with quiet opulence. Men in tailored suits, women draped in designer silks, and the occasional gleaming luxury car rolling by. Among the crowd, a man strolled leisurely, his steps unhurried, his presence unassuming. Plain black t-shirt, faded jeans, and scuffed sneakers made him blend into the background. Just another passerby in the sea of affluence. But this was no ordinary man. This was Keanu Reeves. Keanu wasn't here to indulge in excess. He was here for something far more meaningful. Through the gleaming display of an upscale boutique, he spotted it, the perfect gift. A watch, delicate yet timeless. Its tiny diamonds twinkling under the store's golden lights like a constellation. He smiled to himself. This was for someone special. Someone who had once helped him when he had nothing. With quiet purpose, he reached for the polished brass handle of the boutique's entrance. But just as he was about to step inside, a voice cut through the air, sharp and clipped. "Sir, hold on a moment." Keanu turned, his warm smile ever present. But the expression that greeted him wasn't one of hospitality. A young saleswoman, poised and immaculate in her tailored uniform, stood just inside the threshold. Her manicured fingers gripped an iPad, her eyes assessing him with a look that hovered between doubt and dismissal. She hesitated before speaking again, her tone polite, yet dripping with condescension. "Are you sure you're in the right place?" Keanu's smile remained, unfaltering. "I think so," he said, his voice calm and measured. He nodded towards the display case. "I'd like to buy a gift." But she didn't move. Instead, her eyes flicked over his casual attire, no designer logos, no tailored fit, nothing that screamed wealth. The slight smirk on her lips deepened. "Sir," she began slowly, as if explaining something to a child, "this store is very exclusive. We serve a certain clientele, people who prefer a more curated shopping experience. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable somewhere else." There it was, the unspoken judgment. Keanu remained silent for a beat, letting her words settle in the space between them. His gaze didn't harden, didn't waver, he simply observed her, as if committing this moment to memory. Then, with his usual grace, he nodded. "I understand." And he turned to leave, but he never got the chance. Before he could take a step, a heavy hand landed on his shoulder. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to come with me." A deep voice instructed. Keanu glanced sideways, finding himself face to face with a security guard, broad-shouldered, towering, his uniform crisp, his belt lined with radios and keys. Behind him, the saleswoman stood smirking, arms crossed in satisfaction. She hadn't just turned him away. She had called security on him. Called security on Keanu Reeves. The absurdity of it might have been amusing, if not for the deeper implication. How many others had been treated like this, without the privilege of proving their worth? The security guard, unaware of who he was dealing with, tightened his grip ever so slightly. "Sir, we don't want any trouble. Let's step away from the store." Keanu didn't resist. He didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. Instead, he let out a quiet sigh, a knowing exhale of breath, and nodded. "Of course," he said simply. As they led him away, a few onlookers turned their heads, some watching with curiosity, others barely sparing a glance. To them, it was just another scene in the world of exclusivity. A man who didn't belong being quietly escorted out. But what they didn't know, what the saleswoman and security guard had just set in motion, was a lesson that would be remembered long after this moment faded. Because Keanu Reeves wasn't just walking away. He was preparing to come back. And when he did, the entire store would regret everything. The evening air was crisp as Keanu Reeves walked down Rodeo Drive. His steps slow, measured, thoughtful. The polished storefronts around him gleamed under the city lights, their interiors filled with luxury goods meant to be admired, but, apparently, only by the right kind of people. He exhaled, running a hand through his hair, but not out of frustration. He had long since learned to let go of moments like these. He had spent years in Hollywood, where people either worshipped you or dismissed you, depending on what they thought you were worth. But this time, it wasn't about him. It wasn't about a luxury store. It wasn't even about the smug-faced saleswoman who had called security. It was about something bigger. Because what if he wasn't Keanu Reeves? What if he had been just another man, an ordinary person looking for a meaningful gift? Someone hoping to step inside for just a moment and feel welcomed, only to be judged and discarded like they were nothing? That's what stayed with him. Not the insult, but the thought of how many people had walked away from that same door, carrying with them the quiet sting of humiliation. He knew what that felt like. Decades ago, before the fame, before the red carpets, before The Matrix and John Wick. He had been just a kid trying to make it, sleeping on borrowed couches, struggling to find his place in a world that constantly reminded him he didn't belong. So this moment, it wasn't just another rejection. It was a reminder that power isn't about money or status. True power is how you treat people when you think they can do nothing for you. Keanu stopped walking. The neon lights of a small cafe flickered nearby, casting a warm glow on the pavement. He stepped inside, greeted by the comforting hum of quiet conversations, the hiss of steaming coffee, the soft clatter of cups against saucers, a place where no one was trying to prove anything. He ordered a black coffee, simple, unpretentious, just like him. Taking a seat by the window, he pulled out his phone and made a call. "Hey," he said, his voice calm but carrying a hint of something else. "Purpose. I need a favor. Are you free tomorrow morning?" A pause. Then the voice on the other end responded with curiosity. Keanu smiled slightly, but he didn't elaborate. "You'll see. It's going to be worth it." And as he sat there, sipping his coffee, watching the world move past the glass, a plan began to form in his mind. Not revenge. No, that wasn't his style. But a lesson. The kind that wouldn't just change the way one saleswoman saw the world. The kind that would change the way millions did. Because by the time this was over, she wouldn't just remember his name. She would remember the day she learned that true worth has nothing to do with appearances. The next morning, the luxury boutique was business as usual. Inside, soft classical music played over hidden speakers. Expensive perfume lingered in the air, and the click of designer heels echoed against the marble floor. Sales associates moved with trained precision, their smiles reserved for those who looked like they belonged. At the front counter, Samantha, the same young saleswoman who had dismissed Keanu the day before, stood chatting with a coworker, flipping through an iPad. "Ugh," she sighed, rolling her eyes. "You should have seen this guy yesterday. Scruffy, totally out of place. Tried to come in like he could actually afford anything here." Her colleague smirked. "Let me guess. You sent him away?" "Please," Samantha scoffed, tossing her sleek ponytail over her shoulder. "I escorted him out, security and all. Some people just don't get that not everyone is meant to be here." And then it happened. The soft hum of the boutique's atmosphere was shattered by the deep, unmistakable roar of an engine pulling up outside. Heads turned. Even Samantha's conversation faltered as the glow of sunlight bounced off the sleek, blacked-out SUV now idling at the curb. The back door opened, and stepping out, dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit, exuding effortless confidence and quiet authority, was Keanu Reeves. The change was subtle, yet undeniable. Yesterday, he had walked in as just another man. Today, he moved with an energy that commanded attention without demanding it. The onlookers on the street began whispering, some pulling out their phones to record. Samantha froze. Her breath hitched in her throat as she locked eyes with the very man she had humiliated just hours ago. Keanu walked through the entrance this time, with no one daring to stop him. The store manager, an older woman with sharp eyes and a finely pressed blazer, had already been alerted to the VIP guest and hurried over, her face a picture of professional composure. "Mr. Reeves," she greeted, her voice smooth but clearly surprised. "It's an honor to have you here. How can we assist you today?" Keanu's gaze didn't waver. His voice was calm, polite, but unmistakably firm. "Thank you," he said, offering a small nod. Then, his eyes flickered toward Samantha, who had turned as pale as the marble beneath her feet. "I believe we've met before." The air in the boutique shifted. The tension was palpable. Samantha's lips parted, but no words came. Keanu let the silence linger just long enough. Then, in that same measured, composed tone, he spoke again. "Yesterday, I came in here dressed like I always do when I'm not working. Comfortably, casually." His voice remained soft, but his words carried weight. "And I was told, in not so many words, that I didn't belong here." Samantha's jaw tightened. A few customers had stopped browsing, listening intently now. "I was judged," Keanu continued, "not by who I am, but by what I looked like. And while I can walk away from that without a second thought, I know there are so many others who can't. People who aren't given a chance, simply because they don't fit someone else's definition of worthy." The boutique was now completely silent. Even Samantha, the woman who had been so quick to dismiss him, couldn't meet his gaze. The store manager, sensing the weight of the moment, stepped in, her tone apologetic. "Mr. Reeves, please understand this isn't how we want our customers to be treated. I deeply regret what happened yesterday, and I assure you, this does not reflect our company's values." Keanu tilted his head slightly. "Doesn't it?" A heavy pause. The question hung in the air, forcing everyone to reflect. Then, with a quiet grace that only Keanu Reeves could pull off, he gave a small, understanding nod. "I'm not here to shame anyone," he said, finally breaking the silence. "But I think there's an opportunity here for all of us to reconsider the way we treat people." He turned toward Samantha, who looked on the verge of melting into the floor. And yet, his expression wasn't one of anger. It was kindness, the kind that doesn't excuse mistakes, but offers a lesson instead of a punishment. "I hope this experience reminds you," he said gently, "that true worth isn't measured by appearances." Then, with a simple nod, he shifted his attention back to the store manager. "Now, about that watch I was looking at yesterday." The manager exhaled in relief and eagerly gestured toward the display case. "Of course, Mr. Reeves. Please, take your time." But Keanu wasn't finished. His gaze swept over the collection of gleaming luxury watches, pieces meant to symbolize status, success, exclusivity, and his eyes darkened with thought. Then, without hesitation, he looked back at the manager and said 6 words that left the boutique in absolute shock. "I'd like to buy them all." A stunned silence. Even the manager blinked in disbelief. "All of them, sir?" Keanu nodded, his expression unwavering. "Yes," he confirmed. "And I'd like them delivered to several charities I support, places where people actually understand the value of time, not just the price of it." A sharp inhale rippled through the store. Samantha's face drained of color. The sheer weight of what had just happened hit her like a freight train. Not only had she misjudged him, but the man she had dismissed so easily had just made one of the biggest purchases in the store's history, not for himself, but for others. That was power. Not money, not status, character. As the final transaction was made and arrangements set in place, Keanu turned, ready to leave, but just before stepping outside, he cast one final glance back at Samantha, not with resentment, not with triumph, but with something far greater. A look that said, "I hope you remember this lesson. I hope you pass it on. Then, with that same effortless calm, he walked back through the glass doors, past the waiting SUV, and into the sunlit streets of Rodeo Drive. The boutique stood silent, the weight of what had just happened settling over them like a storm that had passed, but left permanent change in its wake. Later that night, a short video would surface on social media, a clip taken by a passerby who had witnessed the entire scene. The caption, "Keanu Reeves just taught the world a lesson in humility." Within hours, the video exploded across the internet. Millions of views, thousands of comments. Headlines flooded news feeds. Police car light Keanu Reeves outsmarts arrogant boutique employee in the most humble way possible. Police car light, a lesson in humility. Keanu Reeves shows what true class looks like. Police car light, this is why we love Keanu Reeves. And at the center of it all was a single, undeniable truth. In a world that measures worth by appearances, Keanu Reeves had just reminded everyone that true worth is something much deeper. The boutique was still reeling from what had just happened. Employees stood frozen. Customers whispered among themselves. And Samantha, the very woman who had dismissed Keanu Reeves the day before, felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. Just moments ago, she had been standing tall, confident in her role as a gatekeeper of luxury. Now, she was watching the very man she had rejected buy out the entire collection of watches, not to flaunt, not to wear, but to give them all away to people who truly needed them. And the most humbling part? He never raised his voice, never held a grudge, never humiliated her. Instead, Keanu Reeves had just left her and the entire world with an unforgettable lesson in grace. The store manager, still collecting herself from the shock of the purchase, cleared her throat and tried to maintain professionalism. "Mr. Reeves, we'll have all the watches delivered to your preferred locations immediately. May I ask, where would you like them sent?" Keanu smiled, his expression warm but intentional. "I have a few ideas." Then, with quiet purpose, he pulled out his phone and began listing charities, organizations, and hospitals that would soon receive some of the world's most expensive timepieces, places that had nothing to do with status, wealth, or appearances, but everything to do with people who deserved to feel valued. One was a center for underprivileged youth, where kids from difficult backgrounds were working toward a better future. Another was a Veterans Support Foundation, assisting soldiers who had sacrificed everything but were often forgotten by society. A third was a women's shelter, helping survivors of domestic violence rebuild their lives. And one of the watches, just one, was going to a janitor at a local school. A man Keanu had met years ago who once told him, "I've worked hard my whole life, but I've never owned anything truly nice." Today, that was going to change. As the orders were finalized, the store manager, who had spent years dealing with the wealthiest elite, felt something she never had before. Not admiration for a rich man's purchase, but deep respect for a man's character. Meanwhile, Samantha stood silently, her hands trembling as she held the iPad that had once felt like a symbol of power, but now felt like nothing more than a meaningless screen. She wanted to say something, to apologize, but how do you apologize for making someone feel like they weren't enough? As if sensing her hesitation, Keanu turned to her, but he didn't look at her with resentment. He smiled, a genuine, kind, forgiving smile. "Thank you," he said simply. Samantha blinked, confused. "F for what?" "For yesterday." Her breath caught. He wasn't mocking her. He wasn't being sarcastic. "I needed the reminder," Keanu continued. "A reminder that not everyone gets treated the way they should. A reminder that, sometimes, people just need a chance." Samantha felt her throat tighten. She had never felt so small, not because he made her feel that way, but because she realized she had made herself that way. She stammered, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Reeves. I was wrong." Keanu's eyes softened. "You weren't wrong. You just weren't looking at the whole picture." She nodded, feeling the weight of his words settle deep into her chest. And then, In a moment that caught everyone off guard, Keanu reached into his pocket and pulled out one of the watches he had just purchased. He turned it over in his palm, letting the light dance across its pristine surface. Before holding it out to Samantha, her eyes widened. "Wait, what? No, I can't." Keanu tilted his head, still holding the watch out to her. "Why not?" She hesitated. Her hands shook as she reached for it, barely daring to believe what was happening. "But why would you give this to me?" Keanu's smile grew just a little. "Because now you understand." She swallowed hard, her heart pounding. Not all gifts are about money. Not all lessons are about punishment. Sometimes, the most valuable thing a person can receive is a second chance. The store manager, watching the entire exchange, wiped discreetly at her eyes before clapping her hands together. "Well, Mr. Reeves, it has truly been an honor to have you here." Keanu nodded politely. "Thank you for having me." And with that, he turned, stepped back through the boutique doors, and disappeared into the Los Angeles morning. The moment he left, the store erupted. Employees whispered, customers murmured, and within minutes, the first video clip hit social media, captured by a bystander. It showed Keanu Reeves, humble, kind, effortlessly composed, turning a moment of judgment into an unforgettable lesson in humanity. The caption, "This is what real class looks like." By midday, the video had already hit 1 million views. By nightfall, it had passed 10 million. The internet exploded. "Fire Keanu Reeves just did it again," reminding us all why he's the most genuine man in Hollywood. Fire, he could have embarrassed her. Instead, he taught her. Fire, money doesn't buy class. But character? That's priceless. And as the story spread, the impact grew. The boutique, once known for exclusivity, announced a new company-wide policy. No customer would ever be judged by appearance again. Luxury brands across the world took notice, shifting their approach to customer service, realizing that exclusivity means nothing if it comes at the cost of respect. But the most powerful change? The thousands of people who saw themselves in Keanu's story. People who had been turned away. People who had been made to feel less than. People who had been waiting for someone, anyone, to remind them that their worth was never about the labels on their clothes, but the kindness in their hearts. And now, they had proof. Because Keanu Reeves hadn't just changed one woman's mind. He had changed millions. And that was the greatest gift of all. The video of Keanu Reeves' incredible act spread like wildfire. Within hours, it was everywhere: Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, news outlets, and celebrity blogs. People couldn't stop talking about it. A Hollywood icon, a luxury boutique, a moment of quiet judgment, and an unforgettable lesson in humility. But what made the story so powerful wasn't just who it involved. It was what it represented. This wasn't just about Keanu Reeves buying watches. It was about every person who had ever been looked down on, dismissed, or made to feel unworthy because of their appearance. The comments poured in by the thousands. Speech balloon: "I remember walking into a high-end store once, just to look, and the way they treated me, I'll never forget it. Seeing Keanu handle this with such grace makes me believe in humanity again." Speech balloon: "This happened to my dad when he tried to buy a suit for a job interview. The store treated him like trash until he pulled out his credit card." People need to stop judging by appearances. Speech balloon: "The way he handled this. No anger, no ego, just pure class. That's what makes Keanu different." It wasn't just fans who took notice. Major news outlets picked up the story. Keanu Reeves silences a rude saleswoman in the most humble way possible. The lesson in kindness that every luxury brand needs to hear. Why Keanu Reeves is the role model the world desperately needs. Soon, talk shows and podcasts were breaking down the moment, discussing its deeper meaning. Psychologists weighed in on why we judge people based on their appearance. Retail professionals examined the toxic culture of exclusivity in luxury brands. Even business leaders took notice. with some of the biggest names in fashion pledging to retrain their staff on customer inclusivity. And in the midst of it all, the boutique at the center of the storm was forced to respond. A week after the incident, they released an official statement. "We deeply regret the experience Mr. Reeves had in our store. This moment has reminded us of the importance of treating every customer with respect, regardless of appearance. Effective immediately, we are implementing company-wide training to ensure this never happens again." But words weren't enough, because actions speak louder. And so, in a move that shocked the retail world, the boutique announced a major initiative: Small Blue Diamond, a partnership with Keanu Reeves' favorite charities to support underserved communities. Small Blue Diamond, a new scholarship program for students in need. Because true luxury is having opportunities. Small Blue Diamond, a commitment to customer-first service, ensuring that every person who walks through their doors is treated with dignity. It was a transformation no one saw coming. And at the heart of it, a simple, unshaken truth: respect should never be a luxury. But the most beautiful part of the story wasn't just the boutique's change. It was the ripple effect. Inspired by Keanu's actions, people around the world began sharing their own moments of kindness. A high school teacher in Chicago saw the video and created a See Beyond challenge for her students, encouraging them to reach out to someone they'd normally overlook. A young man in Tokyo, who had once been judged for his simple clothes, started a blog called Wear What You Want, reminding people that self-worth isn't found in designer labels. A homeless shelter in New York received an anonymous donation, a box of brand new watches, with a note attached: "Time belongs to everyone. So does dignity." No signature, no need for recognition, just kindness, paying itself forward. And where was Keanu in all of this? Not on social media, not in interviews. He was exactly where he always was, quietly doing good. Because for him, this was never about proving a point. It was about living a truth. And now, that truth belonged to all of us. Because in a world that often teaches us to value people by their wealth, status, or looks, Keanu Reeves had reminded the world of something much more important. That true worth has never been about what's on the outside. It's about what's in your heart. So now, I turn to you. Have you ever been judged unfairly? Have you ever felt invisible? Or maybe, have you ever judged someone too quickly, before really seeing them? Let me know in the comments below. And if you believe that kindness and respect should be for everyone, no matter what they wear, no matter where they come from, hit that like button. Because the world needs more reminders like this. And together, we can make kindness go viral.